Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchak. Coming up in today's newscast, Iran takes another step away from the JCPOA nuclear deal.
A new 40,000-year-old discovery offers new insights into our origins.
And an incredible Greek woman arrives in Jerusalem for an unforgettable reunion.
It's now been 40 long years since the Iranian Revolution and 444-day hostage crisis that gave way for the modern Iran.
And to celebrate, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is announcing that Tehran is beginning to inject uranium gas into over 1,000 nuclear centrifuges at the Fordo facility.
Before now, the centrifuges spun empty as per the 2015 JCPOA deal, but this is just the latest in a series of antagonistic actions and withdrawals from international agreements. In fact, just the day before, Tehran announced that it'd also be doubling its operational number of IR-6 centrifuges.
And Iranian leaders have stated that they will continue to push the boundaries until the U.S. and European powers cave into their demands.
هر زمانی اونها برگشتن به تعهدات کامل خودشون، ما هم برمیگردیم به تعهدات کامل خودمون. بنابراین ما این گام هم گامی است قابل بازگشته. مثل گام‌های قبلی که اونها هم قابل بازگشت.
Tehran has also been blaming the United States and Israel for the protests in Iraq and Lebanon. The United States is accusing Iran of nuclear extortion, however, with the State Department saying that Iran has no credible reason to expand its uranium enrichment program and that the U.S. will continue to impose maximum pressures on the regime in Tehran.
Similarly, the State Department's new report on terrorism, which was published on Friday, again confirms that Iran is the world's worst state sponsor of terror, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now vowing never to let Iran develop nuclear arms.
Iran plans its aggression everywhere. It seeks to envelop Israel, it seeks to threaten Israel, it seeks to destroy Israel. We fight back. And I also want to say, given Iran's efforts to expand its nuclear weapons program, expand its enrichment of uranium for making atomic bombs, I repeat here once again, we will never let Iran develop nuclear weapons.
But with regional borders breaking down and the future uncertain, it seems that everyone in the Middle East will have to remain on their toes.
And now joining us with more on the regional developments with Iran is Dr. Martin Sherman, the founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now, 40 years have passed since the Iranian Revolution. And after 40 years, why is Iran still so bent on destroying Israel?
Well, it's part of its political DNA, the Islamic Revolution, something that they want to export. And a non-Islamic entity on what they say is Islamic land is an anathema to them which they cannot tolerate. You know, it's not necessarily in the DNA of the Iranian people, because before the revolution, you know, there were very close ties between Israel and Iran. El Al flights were landing regularly and frequently. The Israeli companies were constructing there. So it's a function of the regime more than the function of the country, I think.
How much of the country do you think is actually buying into that ideology, however? Because after 40 years, you know, we have to imagine that some people are saying, you know, yeah, death to Israel, whatever.
Well, you know, I don't think any reliable public opinion polls are conducted there, but there certainly has been a lot of resistance. There have been signs saying, you know, no to Palestine, no to investments in Syria, etc., and focus on the domestic scene. And there's a lot to focus on the domestic scene. The GDP is shrinking. I think the GDP in 2020 is going to be the same as about the GDP in 2015, which means it's retreated 5 years in terms of GDP, whilst the population has been growing. Prices are high. There's a shortage of merchandise. The currency is devalued by almost 60% over the last year, although it's rallied a little bit in November. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe because of perceived weakness of the Trump administration, when you saw he didn't respond to the attack in Saudi Arabia. Housing prices are going through the roof because of the high inflation. People want to hold, things other than money.
Right.
There's a huge water crisis there, which is going to apparently displace tens of millions of people in the coming decade. So there's a lot to concentrate on the domestic front.
On the domestic front, yeah, we're seeing these protests in Lebanon, and the Iranians seem to be very, very concerned about this. Why are they so worried?
Well, I mean, the uprising against the existing order there means, among other things, opposition to Hezbollah, which is the Iranian agent of influence in Lebanon. And if there's going to be a protest against the existing order, it's going to be a protest against the Hezbollah, and therefore a protest against the Iranian influence there.
Given all the crises, again, that you were referring to within Iran, is Tehran maybe worried that the protests will be exported from Lebanon and Iraq into Iran?
Well, that there will be another Arab Spring of sorts.
Perhaps, but I think there are enough reasons to worry about protests in Iran, even without Lebanon. The question is, I think a lot depends on how the U.S. is viewed as well, because basically there are two questions about Trump: whether he'll be re-elected, or some Democrat who's going to be soft on Iran will be elected, and whether he actually has the resolve to fight, because it doesn't seem that he really has lately. Because, as I said before, he didn't respond to the attack in Saudi Arabia. He didn't respond to the shooting down of the U.S. drone. So maybe this has emboldened the Iranians a little bit. Now they feel they can be a bit more bellicose than they could have been before.
Did the withdrawal from Syria also embolden Iran, in your opinion?
I'm sure there wasn't much deterrence in it. So Trump may be being perceived as perhaps less daunting than he was perceived before these moves.
Right. Now, speaking of the recent tensions in Gaza, how is Iran involved in these tensions, if at all?
Well, the rumors are that it's financing them. It's financing, even though they're Sunnis, the Islamic Jihad and the Hamas are rumored to be...
Do you think they're orchestrating the attacks, though? That they have like a real hand in the planning, maybe even as a divergence from the north?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. But the fact is that they, Hamas and the Jihad know how to plan themselves. I don't think they really need the Iranians to egg them on. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some Iranian input into it. But the problem with Gaza is, as I said before, what are you going to do about it? And I think people are trying to ignore the ugly truth and the hard facts, because, as I said before in a few programs, in the long run, there are either going to be Arabs in Gaza or Jews in the Negev, but there won't be both.
All right. Well, Martin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
In other news, the European Union's High Court of Justice is now just a week away from making a landmark decision that's making many Israeli companies uneasy.
Will Israeli companies in disputed territories be able to continue labeling their products as made in Israel or not?
It all started with Psagot, when the Israeli winery located in Binyamin, just outside of Jerusalem, challenged a 2015 EU directive with the help of Israeli NGOs like the Lawfare Project. The ruling called on European retailers to mark products made in the West Bank, Golan Heights, and East Jerusalem with a special label, which Israel and Psagot argue is discriminatory. And now the EU High Court is preparing to give its final position on the matter next week. But Israel and Psagot charge that the settlement product labeling only provides BDS activists with another weapon to attack the Jewish state, while at the same time damaging peace efforts with the PA. And that's a point that many in the EU are actually now starting to cede. Sweden, for example, has now released a new report showing a 53% rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes over 2018, putting the number this year at an all-time high. And according to Caroline Edtstadler, the EU chair of the Working Group of Anti-Semitism, the EU courts should avoid making unilateral decisions that affect the Israel-Palestinian conflict. But either way, Israeli manufacturers are all on the edge of their seats, waiting for the High Court to render its decision.
Well, speaking of new rulings, the Israeli Supreme Court on Tuesday has ruled that the local director of Human Rights Watch, Omar Shakir, must leave the country within 20 days for supporting the international BDS movement.
And the decision upholds a lower court judgment citing multiple online posts that Shakir made in the past. Well, Shakir, as expected, reacted harshly to the courts. Take a look.
Today's decision will have significant ramifications. It really goes to the heart of what kind of country Israel is and wants to become in the future.
Well, here to break down this further, welcome the head of the Israel desk at NGO Monitor, Itai Ruveni. Thanks for coming in. So how were you involved exactly in the case of Omar?
So in some point during the last 2 years where the court hearing happened, we decided that we cannot sit on the side and we want to provide the right information to the court. Who is Omar Shakir? What is HRW, Human Rights Watch? And we provided a number of researchers, past researchers, and our current research, showing that Omar Shakir was and still is a prominent BDS activist that promoting BDS campaigns against Israeli companies, against the Israeli public.
Now, I know the court system has been kind of, or at least in the press, has been latching onto 2 or 3 posts that Shakir has made, one of which, with regards to FIFA and another with regards to, Gaza. What specifically, are there more posts that you know of? Like, what evidence do you have?
Yeah, so we have, it's not only posts, it's not only social media issues, but for example, Shakir tried to fly abroad in order to promote the FIFA boycott. He tried and failed. It's also activity on the ground. It's not only a post here, a tweet there. It's coordination with different actors, different shareholders in the BDS movement. The report against the Airbnb. Airbnb was all Omar Shakir work. And the court acknowledged that, and not only posts and tweets. And we also had different layers of his BDS activity presented.
Now, I mean, the concept, the idea of deporting BDS supporters has obviously been something that has been controversial in international news, with people questioning, the issues of freedom of speech, per se. Has this been the first case of Israel deporting or not renewing an official from an NGO? Can you tell us a little bit more about the history of these kinds of movements?
Yeah, so first of all, we as NGO Monitor, we are not a big supporters of the BDS entry law. We think there are other ways to deal with this phenomenon. But when you look in the history of the past few years, there were NGO officials that were prevented to enter Israel from different reasons, by the way, not only BDS, sometimes it's other things that we don't know about or the state is not telling us about. Shakir case was interesting because Human Rights Watch is not a humanitarian or human rights NGO in Israel. It's not registered in Israel. It's not an international entity registered in the list of, really? Yes. It's surprising. So Human Rights Watch is a foreign company sitting in the US that sent a regular worker, just the employee, to Israel.
So they're not even registered here as an NGO?
Not as a local NGO and not as an international NGO.
So why was he targeted then more specifically?
So this is the interesting part. They speak about a whole human rights world that's going to be damaged from this decision. And we are saying, no, the decision is only against one specific BDS activist that was lying to the court, that was using different tactics in order to stay here for 2 years, and it's only about not renewing his visa.
So how should Israel have gone about working with Shakir or banning him in a different way?
Well, we believe it's,
I mean, how should it, because I know that you're a little critical, as you said, of the BDS law. So how should Israel have dealt with this differently, in your opinion? Well,
also, I mean, just what are the implications of moves like this? Because even if the individual in question was doing things that were not okay, right? It still brings into the question, and I'm assuming that there are ways that lots of media sources will twist this as Israel is just denying entry to this country or denying people to stay in this country who are against Israeli policy.
So we also need to understand how Human Rights Watch or all other the anti-Israeli NGOs works. For them, the court is a win-win situation. If Shakir is losing, they're winning because now they can go all over the world and say Israel equals Syria, Iran, North Korea.
That's what I mean.
If like in any other circumstances they will win. So they say, oh, we we defeated the Israeli government in their own home. Mm-hmm. So we acknowledge that, we know that, but I think it's also a good message that we can do a discussion based on facts in the Israeli court system and not based on populism or slogans that all the sides trying to sell us.
This is just such a complicated case.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very complicated issue, but thank you so much for joining us.
We're happy to have you here. Thank you.
All right.
All right. There's just 2 weeks left in blue and white. Chairman Benny Gantz's mandate to form a coalition, and he's been hitting a lot of speed bumps.
But with the prospects of third elections looming overhead, it seems that the solid block of right-wing and religious parties is actually starting to crack. ILTV's Nittany Manson has the story.
In the latest coalition meetings this week, representatives from the Blue and White Party and Prime Minister Netanyahu's Likud party came together in Ramat Gan to negotiate the terms of a potential unity government. And this comes just after more coalition meetings between Blue and White, or Kahol Lavan, and the Labor Gesher parties, which the negotiation teams said were held seriously and in depth, but in good spirits. Kahol Lavan's Prime Minister-elect Benny Gantz, however, had less positive things to say after the meetings with Likud. Gantz charges that Netanyahu is refusing to give up on his immunity and the right-wing bloc, and therefore is dragging Israel into a third round of elections, which Gantz vows to prevent. But every party has vowed to prevent third elections, and some party leaders, even from the right-wing bloc, are starting to put their money where their mouths are. The New Right Party's Naftali Bennett, for example, says he's willing to sit in the opposition if it means forming a functional government, while the Haredi Shas party leader, Aryeh Deri, even just suggested a direct election for the premiership between Gantz and Netanyahu. Bennett was mostly ignored, however, while Deri's suggestion was shut down by a statement released from the right-wing bloc. So for now, it's still anyone's game.
Well, the votes are in, and Israel is officially one of the top 20 countries in the world that people believe you should travel to, coming in at number 15.
Or at least that's what readers at Condé Nast believe when they ranked countries in terms of the top places to visit in 2019, where Israel is scoring 89.54%, coming in one spot before Colombia and one after Tanzania.
Very exact number there. For us, though, it's no wonder why people would love to come, especially as having some of the top-rated hotels in the Middle East doesn't hurt either. In fact, in another report from Condé Nast, 4 Jerusalem hotels were actually ranked on the top 15 list as well, including the David Citadel Hotel, Mamila, the Waldorf Astoria, and the King David. And the other hotels on the list actually happen to be in the UAE, Qatar, and Oman.
But at any rate, Israel's popularity shows. As recent reports say, tourism in Israel is up by 10% from 2018. And Israel's Ministry of Tourism actually says that Israel is a leading tourism destination and that digital marketing campaigns have been successful in new markets and are the reason that Israel has actually broken records in tourism 2 years in a row, which is amazing.
And you can really tell. All right, now we hope you take care of your teeth because in 40,000 years from now, someone might be examining them, right,
well,
Aaron?
I think that kind of needs an explainer, Natasha, because 6 teeth were actually discovered in the town of Manot in the north of Israel. They're 40,000 years old, and Tel Aviv University researchers have had them under the microscope. They say it's just the evidence that they were finally looking for to put some debates about Middle East European migration patterns to rest.
Serious debates. All right, exactly, because teeth have enamel. They're actually great records of history, even better than other bones. And while some archaeologists believe most travel happened from the Levant region towards Europe, it turns out that these teeth show how some early humans made the trip in the opposite direction. Also, the European human findings predate any human remains found in Israel to date, and leading researchers now believe that the teeth belonged to early humans instead of Neanderthals, the species that were likely living in this region at the time.
Now, the Aurignacian people are known to be one of the earliest human groups from Europe, and they're considered to have been artists, leaving behind cave paintings, including the famous drawing of a hand that was found in a French cavern. And similarly, in Israel, a horse painting was found inside a cave.
But whoever they belong to, the teeth are likely to be put on display at the new Museum of Natural History here in Tel Aviv.
Which is good, because I want to go and compare.
Yeah, of course, because you're an artist yourself, so you want to be able to make sure that, you know.
Well, I want to make sure my teeth match up.
Well, now after this story, I think we both...
Paintings.
After this story, I think we both realize how much more we need to take care of our dental hygiene, because this is crazy. 40,000 years later. Anyhow, all right, now, are you ready for a one-of-a-kind look at Israel's incredible countryside? Because if so, listen up.
That's right, because the 16th annual Israel Ride is now officially underway, and best of all, it's for a good cause. At the crack of dawn Wednesday morning, roughly 200 Jewish riders from all around the world came together near Beitar Illit in southern Israel. And for the next 5 days, they'll be snaking their way around some of the most awe-inspiring landscapes the Holy Land has to offer. For the 16th annual Israel Ride is a fundraiser for peace, sustainability, and environmentalism in the Middle East. And it includes options for both recreational and experienced cyclists as riders journey through the Gaza periphery, the Negev Desert, and the Romon Crater before finally concluding in Eilat near the Red Sea. Also, last year, the organization raised over $5 million for charity organizations Chazon and the Arava Institute. But this year, they hope to top that record. Chazon creates sustainable Jewish communities while also running retreats and educational programs. Then the Arava Institute focuses on environmental studies and regional cooperations on sustainable living between Israel and its Arab neighbors. But regardless, check out the annual ride next year for your chance at seeing Israel in a wholly new way.
All right, now, as the years go on, don't cry, Aaron. There are fewer and fewer survivors of the Holocaust living among us. But luckily, one Greek woman known as Righteous Among the Nations got to meet the family that she saved during World War II.
And here to tell us the heartwarming details is ILTV's Shanna Fold. So, Shanna, are you going to make us cry?
I was very teared up reading this story today. The woman's name is Dina Melpomeni. She's 92 years old. She was flown into Jerusalem to meet the 40 descendants of, of a family that she saved during World War II.
Wow, can you give us some details of...
Yes, so here's the story. The Mordechai family, there were a handful of relatives, brothers and sisters. They were hiding out during the war. Now, I think a lot of people don't think of Greece as being one of the contentious places where Jews were persecuted during the Second World War.
Right. Well,
but the whole community was just wiped out.
Yeah.
Except for this family who was saved by her. So basically, they were hiding out in a Turkish church for a whole year, these 5 kids. And they stayed there until their health suffered so much that they had to leave, and Dina rescued them. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with her sister at the time.
Wow.
And she brought them in and literally shared her food rations with all of the kids. And what the kids say now, one of them spoke up. She said that she remembered that everything was shared with her. So basically, all the food, all the health care, everything that she could do to benefit them. It wasn't just that she took them in. She really took care of them.
So how did they find each other again? How did they stay in contact?
That's the most wild part. So what happened was also... they all got spread out. Also, the mom was there. She took off with her 2 little kids. Everybody went in different directions, and they all met back up after the area was liberated and made their way to Israel. But I asked myself, without cell phones, how
do you stay in contact? Well,
how did they find each other?
Right.
They ran into the woods.
And
they just found it. They found their way back.
It's crazy. So I mean, this is a big deal also because we're seeing a lot of Holocaust survivors disappear. So
yes,
to have her come here.
No, I mean just the whole ceremony, the whole idea of kind of because we have so many righteous among the nations.
Yes.
Who are kind of
actually 355 from Greece.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a really for the small community of Greece that it is. It's not a huge country. 355 people were recognized, which means that there were for all of the people who were recognized. There's always people who go unnamed and go unrecognized and did those good deeds. But there was this one powerful moment for me that I read. She said that now, after meeting the family and seeing the descendants of the people that she helped, she could now die quietly.
Wow. All right. Well, let's try.
Until 120, as they say.
This is such a happy story, but don't make me cry. All right. Thank you for joining us, Shanna. All right. Let's take a look at the weather forecast now. Right, Aaron? Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy with lows between around 60 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 and 18 degrees Celsius. And then tomorrow, you can expect mostly clear skies and highs in the mid to high 80s or between about 28 and 32 degrees Celsius.
That's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.49 shekels to the American dollar, For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchek. Thank you so much for watching.